Hey, what's up, ladies and gentlemen? So today we're going to be doing third lord in the fifth house, and what happens when the planet that controls your third house and is the lord of the third house is sitting in the fifth house in your birth horoscope. And like I said yesterday, if you haven't watched this video, go watch this, and then you might want to come back to this video again, or you might want to go to the video uploaded yesterday. Okay, cool your video. So third lord, what is the third house and the third lord that controls it? Well, third house in everyone's horoscope represents, oh my god, what the hell? Yashi, your hair are all over me. Yeah, that's what happens when you have Yashis. So, third lord is mainly known as a house of communication. It's a house of intelligence. It's a house of your skills, your hobbies, your willpower, your self efforts, your siblings, your close neighbors, your short distance travel. It's everything that you grew up with in your childhood. Because the second, third, fourth, and even a little bit of the fifth house are all concerning your childhood, all concerning from your moment of your birth, which is the first house, all the way to your high school, which is the fifth house. So everything comes in there, but third lord really becomes that strongest house. This is like, here's the thing with the third house, like anytime I look for someone who is a businessman, who has made something of themselves by themselves, who's a self made man or self made woman. I always look to the third house. That is the first thing I look for. If somebody asks me, can I do business? I look for the third house because I want to see how much effort are you putting in? How much willpower and how much bravery do you have to go out there, face the world, not have a weekly paycheck, and make your own paycheck? Because look, a lot of people, they ask, why is the economy bad? Why is this economy sucks? That's because if you were to ask the same question to your boss, he will say, "Hey man, economy is it is what it is. It goes up and down, but I know how to make my money." That's what the third house is the confidence of doing things on your own effort. So when that planet comes into the fifth house, and fifth house becomes the bhavat bhavam of the third house. What is these terms that I'm using, bhavat bhavam? Simply, it's a higher self of the third house because it's 3 places away from the third house. Any house, like 5 places away from the fifth house, becomes the ninth house of higher education. Fifth house is your education, your children, your performing arts, your creativity, your romance, okay? Speculative business. And higher self of it is post-grad education of the ninth house because it's 5 places away from it. Same thing, third house, it's 3 places away from the third house, so it becomes the higher self of the fifth house, higher self of the third house. So here, the amplification of creativity and effort really blow up because now the person is using their creativity, which is third house also. It is their artistic skills, their hobbies, they're using it in the fifth house, which could deal with several things, which could definitely deal with performing arts, writing scripts, movie scripts, writing fictional stories, romantic stories, because fifth house becomes a house of romance. Your communication is all about love and romance. You really excel when it comes to charming the opposite sex. When it comes to dazzling somebody and winning somebody's heart, that's what third house shows. It shows your skills of communication and your intellect was really formed not by children, because you can't have kids as a kid, okay? We're not on some other planet. But it really shows that your communication was really formed through your own efforts, through creativity. Whenever you were involved in some sort of a creativity, whether it was music, piano, drawing, painting, acting, sewing, designing, creating some house of wood, those things really developed your communication skills. Your communication skills are all about art, all about creativity, all about, like going out there, acting and performing. So it becomes it becomes a higher self of the third house. Your skills level of writing are not just about local writing, but you may go into a lot of creativity when it comes to writing. You love writing, you love communication, but you love it when it comes to all about creativity. You may love writing about the arts, the culture, romance, fictional novel, fictional books. You may even write about, even scripture, ancient scriptures comes into the fifth house, because fifth house is a house of education and learning, and third house is a house of your intellect. So your intelligence really amplifies here, like you know exactly how to do everything and what to do. And these are the people who kind of become the self-employed artists, who may become these painters, who may become these writers and authors who work for themselves, because they're able to put their effort of the third house into the fifth house of creativity. So they're taking their effort, they're taking their bravery, and they're taking their willpower to achieve something into the fifth house. So that's why it's become very important. Now, depending upon what planet controls it, it'll amplify or exuberate those qualities depending upon the planet's qualities. If Sun controls your third house of communication, of intellect, and creativity, and now sits in the fifth house, what it shows is that, first of all, Sun is your father. Sun is your self-esteem, your confidence, your personality, significator of your work, significator of government, significator of also dynamic performing arts. So it gives a strong indication for somebody who might just either love being in acting, love going out there performing on stage, or they love the political arena. They love going out there and creatively, dazzling people with their speech in political arena, because fifth house is also the house of political arena, and it's a house of speculative business as well. Okay, but here mainly because the fact Sun is now in Venus's sign Libra of creativity, relationships, and designing, it really shows that you express your communication when you're in romantic relationship with other people. Your creativity and self-esteem comes when you are involved with the other people in a very romantic and creative way, and that exemplifies who you are. Your work has to do either with speculative business or creativity. You can either be a stockbroker, you can be a financial analyst, a sports bettor, or you may just be an actor, a performing artist, or politician. And it shows that your father himself was a very creative person. Your father could have been an artist, writer, or a poet, or a painter, or he could be a stockbroker, because it has to do with the fifth house energy. Okay, let's say Moon controls your third house. Moon controls your third house. Moon comes into the fifth house. What it shows is that your communication and your intellect, your artistic skills were really formed through being very focused and structured on certain things of the fifth house. Although you may become critical of your own work, although you may become critical even in romantic relationships, however, you are very much focused when it comes to things of creativity. You're able to focus on one task of perfecting your skills of, let's say, acting before you go into writing scripts. However, communication of writing and communication of speech really becomes amplified, because now your moon is in a sign controlled by Mercury. And moon represents your mother. Moon represents your emotion. Moon represents your emotional psyche. It represents your feelings. So your feelings are really expressed through creativity. Your feelings are really expressed through, your mother being involved with you in a lot of either, educational or creative elements in your life. Meaning that your mother could have put you in some like math club early on, and you found creativity through that. Or your mother, really taught you how to be creative, but in a very focused way. She could have been also a healer herself. She could have been an educator and a teacher, and because of her teaching skills, you were able to develop your creativity, you were able to develop your communication skills. However, your intellect is really supreme because of the fact your mind is not scattered in the sign of Virgo as moon controlling it, because now your mind is focused and putting everything and organizing everything. So mainly when you are doing anything of creativity, you go into details of things. You go in the most minute details of doing something. When it comes to education, you may focus on like subjects like mathematics, physics, biology, healing people. That becomes a part of your creativity. Let's say Mercury controls your third house. Mercury controls your third house, goes into the fifth house, shows that you have this very dynamic way of communication. Because Mercury is communication. Mercury originally controls the third house with Gemini. Mercury is your speech, your education, your writing skills, your mimicking skills, your acting skills, your business skills. So absolutely it will show somebody who is working for themselves because you're putting your effort in creativity. So you can be a writer, brilliant actor. You can become a great businessman and stockbroker. When you go into sports betting, your Mercury just activates. You know exactly what team to bet on, how to gamble your money. Now here's the thing with Mercury. Mercury here can make you a gambler, make you an addictive gambler, especially let's say Rahu aspects Mercury. If Rahu or Mars aspects Mercury, can really make person take a lot of chances in their life. So, but in a way, it's a good or bad thing because you can be a stockbroker, you can be a hedge fund manager, you can be a sports bettor who's freaking making $1 million a year. So who cares? Or if your Mercury is damaged in the fifth house, then it can show that somebody who just keeps losing money when investing, who keeps losing money when betting. Okay? Let's say Venus controls your third house and Venus goes into the fifth house. Venus is what? Venus is your ability to form relationships, your love, your creativity, your artistry. Venus is a significator of art and acting. So it really shows somebody who can be a great actor. Somebody who loves being in romance. These people, first of all, it really shows somebody who's going to have a love marriage. Even in a traditional country like India, where traditional arranged marriages are still a norm, you would only want to be with somebody who you can fall deeply in love with, who you can have this romantic relationship before marriage. You really love the arts and stage performing. However, you really love forming your creativity is really becomes your philosophical communication. Your spirituality and your creativity and any form of creative art, even education, needs to have a philosophical, spiritual, and a very emotional, romantic attachment. If you don't have these things, then you may not be able to, really conjure up the things of the fifth house. You have to be emotionally attached to somebody in order to really amplify your creativity. In romance, you become really emotional. You may suddenly get attached to somebody, and that may, either affect you negatively or positively. Sometimes when you get too much into a relationship, you forget everything else, and when it breaks up, the world shatters. We have all gone through it in our 20s and teens. Okay, let's say Mars controls your third house, and Mars is in the fifth house. That really shows somebody who can, because Mars is what? Mars is your energy, your willpower. Because Mars is a significator of the third house for everybody. Not the planet that rules it. Mars is a significator of the third house because it requires effort and fighting and competition and putting your effort into certain things. Mars is your energy, your fighting skills. Mars is your aggressive, competitive ability. So the fifth house shows somebody who can be a really daring businessman, who can go out there, bet everything and win everything, who goes out there, fight in sports arena. Meaning that in fifth house, Mars really amplifies the sports and being an athlete. Because fifth house is a house of fun, house of doing things, house of activities. So it can be sports or romance, but your activities are now really amplified. Either, and plus Mars makes a person a really very sexual in the fifth house of romance. In romance, you really want to have that physical relation with somebody in order to really feel romantically connected to them. Mars in the fifth house can really show that you were really good in sports. And also you will engage your own kids in sports. When it comes to education, you're really good in mechanical things. You're really good at engineering things. You're really good at building little things, including computer engineering, can be seen with Mars in the fifth house. Jupiter controls your third house and sits in the fifth house. Jupiter is what? Jupiter is your higher self, your education, your philosophy, your spiritual beliefs, your morals. It represents your gurus, your teachers. It represents everything religious and everything divine. And third house of efforts and skills. And Jupiter, remember, Jupiter is the significator of the fifth house. Jupiter is a significator for everybody for the second, fifth, ninth, and 11th house. everything dealing with finance. So what this shows is somebody who is definitely into finance, being a financial analyst, being any kind of a financier, whatever, anything to do with money. Jupiter can show with the fifth house. Jupiter can also show that your siblings may have been like your gurus and teachers who instilled a creative sense in you. Your creativity is classical because Jupiter represents classical art and classical music. Jupiter was the first planet to signify creativity because of the fact it was the significator of your divine self or of knowledge or any kind of knowledge. And creativity and anything that you learn is a knowledge. So if you're learning to paint, that's Jupiter, not Venus. Venus became later on about these things. But Jupiter here really shows that your siblings and your ability to form creative things in your life was really exemplified by your siblings. Your siblings may have become your gurus. You yourself became a teacher in your life. And you may have become a teacher in lives of other people, meaning that you can be a financial teacher, you can be a professor in college. Okay? It shows that your gurus were really formed, your true gurus were really formed during your high school years. Those were the teachers that you really that really instilled a lot of values in you. And it also shows that your ability to express yourself with the opposite sex or the same sex in romantic sense is very divine. It is very much about the depth of the soul instead of just a physical. You don't. Physical interaction is important for everybody, but for you, you have to relate to people in romantic sense, spiritually and philosophically. You love philosophy. You love learning higher things because of the fact from the fifth house, Jupiter aspects the ninth house of higher learning. So education becomes a very strong norm for yourself. You can go into biology. You can go into any kind of finance or any kind of not mathematical, but any kind of things that has to do with, higher education. You may just love higher education. That becomes a source of your creativity. But in business, banking and finance becomes really strong in the fifth house. Jupiter can also make you a coach and a sports athlete. See, athlete is represented by not just Mars, but also Mercury, Sun, and Jupiter. These four planets can really form an athlete. So you can be an athlete as well with the Jupiter in the fifth house. Let's say Saturn controls your third house. Saturn controls your third house, sits in the fifth house. Saturn is what? Saturn is reality. Saturn is showing you what's real and what's not illusionary. Saturn forces you to be disciplined, be structured and organized in your life. Saturn slows things down because it wants you to be patient and not wanting everything now. So Saturn will bring frustration of that. What this can show is that your communication and creativity felt stuck for a long time in your life. You felt creative, but then for some reason you couldn't express yourself creatively. Your communication style, was very dulled down, and even in romance, you feel this cold reaction from other people. Anytime you got into romance, whether it's a teenager or in your 20s, you felt like, God, there's no that spark in my relationship. Everything is just bland and boring. And you might be running into a lot of mature people, dating a lot of older people in your life. Your siblings must have been obviously much older than you. And it shows that your third house of communication, your third house of efforts, went into the fifth house. And it shows that you had to put a lot of effort and a lot of frustration in your educational field. Meaning that growing up, even up to high school, it was really tough for you to concentrate on studies. Now, unless Mercury sits with Saturn or Jupiter aspects Saturn, that can alter Saturn's energy. And Saturn can go a little bit faster, but it'll really frustrate you in learning things, in understanding things in early childhood. But in your mid-30s and after 30s, it can show that slowly you start to get the, more creativity out of your romantic relationships. You had more fun with your children. And this can also show your children might have been delayed too, because of the fact Saturn is a slow moving planet in the 5th house of children. So it'll show you might have had children in your 30s or early 30s or in your 40s even. Okay. So guys, this was my analysis of third lord in the 3rd house. If you're new to my channel, subscribe below. And if you want to know where your third lord is placed and if it's in the 3rd house, for that, check out the links below. Check out my books there, Astrology Aspects and Conjunctions at the Speed of Light, and my full astrology report that you will get on my website at the link below. All right. Otherwise, we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.